Kia ora, John Boynton, former colleague of mine. This is a bit odd because here we are just off a very busy Auckland street looking at a fake Christmas tree right beside a train station. But what we're here to talk about is somewhere that's far, far away from this. We're here to talk about Te Urewera. And I'm talking to you because you are Tūhoe. How would you describe it?
It's a huge place and there's different whātua or valleys and different communities. I come from the Matahi Valley, which is kind of on the fringes of the Urewera towards Whakatane, about 30 minutes out. And whenever I think of Matahi, I think about my nan's homestead, our whānau homestead, which is still there, and the many Christmases and summers we spent there. And it's a place where kind of time just stops and you're surrounded by this beautiful ngahere and these beautiful klinawa. And I think about New Year's spent up at 8 Acres, a really popular park where campers go and, you swim all day, you have a barbecue, cooking pipis on the iron over the fire. So, yeah, I'm really lucky to have those experiences and to have that whakapapa connection to Te Urewera.
I'm Sharon Brett-Kelly and I'm talking to John Boynton, reporter for The Hui, a Māori current affairs show on News Hub. And today on The Detail, we look at that connection to the ancient forest of Te Urewera, homeland of Tūhoe, that underlies the stoush over the demolition of dozens of backcountry huts.
Dismantled, burned and decommissioned.
Hunters, rescuers, Pākehā and iwi members alike unhappy with the co-governance decision to raze almost every Te Urewera hut to the ground.
Tūhoe's been ordered to immediately stop burning down tramping huts in Te Urewera after one of their own took legal action.
The Tūhoe leadership says the huts need to go and it has a better plan.
Well, we are wanting to rid Te Urewera of landmarks and things that aren't necessarily about connection.
So it's about more than some old huts being burnt down.
It's been a flashpoint for something that's been simmering and something that is deeper.
It brings in the history of Te Urewera, the former national park, now its own legal identity under the 2014 treaty settlement with Tūhoe. It is more than 2,000 square kilometres of rugged hill country with the largest area of native forest in the North Island, a place where Tūhoe are the tanata whenua and kaitiaki, host and guardians, but no one owns it. What makes the ngahere different there, the forest?
I go back to my first trip to Maunga Pohatu, a very special place in Te Urewera. Many kaumātua refer to it as the manawa of Te Kā Māui, or the heart of the North Island.
As Manuhiri walked onto Maunga Pohatu marae, deep in the Urewera National Park, they were greeted with pelting rain and the chorus of Tūhoe's famed haka Te Puru ringing in the valley peaks. It was a significant day for the descendants of Ruakianana.
And when you travel there, you travel along these ridges and you see this ancient forest and these trees which are kind of quite whimsical and bent out of shape and shaped by the environment, and your mind goes back to the times of your tupuna and what it must have been like for them and the special community they built up there. So, very special place.
Special but also fraught, John,
yes.
At times.
Yes. Of course, the Crown relationship and with Tūhoe has been very difficult, Ruakianana and the invasion of Maunga Pohatu.
They welcomed the Crown back to a community that was raided by armed police in April 1916 to arrest Ruakianana. During the raid, police killed Ruakianana's son Toko and his son's uncle, Te Maipi.
And even in contemporary times, the Ruatoki raid, so there has been a lot of historical trauma there for the whānau of Tūhoe and within the Te Urewera ranges.
Your own tupuna, what stories do you hear of their experiences with Te Urewera?
I remember when my nan was alive telling me stories of her time growing up in Maunga Pohatu. She was a granddaughter of Ruakianana and she talked about, going to school, the missionary schools with the slates and chalk and, seeing the hills move during the Napier earthquakes, So when I was able to go there for the first time in 2017, it was really special to see and imagine that community and what life was like for her. I think there was a lot of pain there, especially with the invasion. The community was really shaken. It was ripped apart, and they carried that hurt for a very, very long time, and they didn't talk about Maunga Pōhatu a lot. Those little stories that I did hear from her were really rare but really special. But, there's a lot of trauma still there.
Speaking of hurt, right now a lot of people are feeling hurt over this latest decision to demolish the huts in Te Urewera, which is obviously a court injunction has stopped that for now. But you have written about, or you have reported on the divisions within Tūhoe.
Yeah, so in 2018 I covered the Tūhoe Ahure, which is a really significant cultural festival.
The young voices of Tūhoe echoed across the heartland of Te Arawa this weekend in Rotorua, as the Ahure returned to where it first began in 1974.
There was controversy around the fact that the post-treaty settlement entity, Te Urewera, didn't provide any funding for it, and that costs were covered by sponsorship and ticket sales. And at the time I interviewed the chair, Te Kruger, and he spelled out, their different processes that they have in place for making decisions. But there were groups at the Ahure that didn't believe in the direction that Te Urewera was going in and wanted more transparency and more involvement, I guess, in that decision-making process.
So, this stoush over the huts, how significant is that?
Yeah, that's been a way for whānau to connect with Te Urewera. They might be dock buildings, but I think the community in Tūhoe have given them life, and that's been their way to hunt and have that relationship with the ngahere. So I don't think you can discount their relationship and I guess their whakapapa with those huts, but you also have to look at what maybe Te Urewera is trying to do in creating a new whakapapa and a new relationship, I guess, for whānau and for the wider community in Aotearoa to have with Te Urewera.
But it is Te Uru Taumātua, led by Te Kruger, that is under fire again, not just from its own people, but trampers, hunters and other manuhiri. Here's Jamie Tahana, RNZ's Māori News Director.
It came up in October. Te Uru Taumātua, which is the operational side of that governance board for Te Urewera, set about on these plans to demolish a lot of the huts in Te Urewera, which is a huge, stunning, remote area of mountain in the northeast, back into Bay of Plenty, Hawke's Bay, sort of that part of the country. A lot of these huts were built in the 1950s and they are quite old. They're also, in many cases, quite well used. So that caused a bit of controversy because, many felt it came out of the blue by Te Uru Taumātua that 1 minute they're there and next minute 29 in total have now been demolished. So that sparked a bit of outrage among outdoor groups and groups like that.
Spent hundreds and hundreds of nights in these huts and they've become part of your life and lifestyle, and our families have associated in there and brought our kids up in there, and it's done and ripped the heart and the soul out of Te Urewera from a manahiri or visitor's perspective.
They're losing these huts. What's following? There wasn't enough communication in their opinion, so... Because
I went on the DOC website to look at this and see what DOC is saying about this, and they do have a statement. But it's the Waikari Moana walk, which is one of the great walks. This plan excludes the huts on that walk.
It does, yeah. So the huts affected are often small huts, maybe up Waimana or Ruatoke or more remote areas. They may not be on main tracks, or there are about 50 that are part of this proposal by Te Uru Taumātua. But, it's still caused some outrage, and that's where we saw this High Court injunction filed.
Wharenui Clyde Tuna, who is also of Tūhoe descent, asked the court to stop the destruction of the huts, saying burning them down caused great distress and loss of wairua.
he brought that injunction saying it affects his tūhoetanga and that consultation by Te Urewera was not done at a hapu level.
The High Court's interim ruling ordered the work immediately cease and Te Urewera release a complete list of the destroyed huts by 5 p.m. today.
And I think that's where that deeper story is, that this is more to do with some of the difficulties in the post-settlement phase with Te Urewera, with Te Urewera as it's governed as a whole. And I think there's a lot to unpick there that has been simmering for a while. You know, this is more than just about huts. There is quite a deeper element to it.
So let's talk about that. Te Urewera is special. Te Urewera is an entity.
And this is part of the things, I've seen this mistake a few times in the past few weeks. Te Urewera is not a national park. It has not been since the Tūhoe settlement in 2014. Te Urewera is
a living person.
Basically, yeah. It's got its own legal personhood in a sense, like we've got now with Whanganui River, like Te Awa Tupua, like we've got with Taranaki Maunga recently as another one. It's not crown ownership, which isn't what a national park implies. There is a Te Urewera governing board made up of Tūhoe and the Crown appointees, and Te Urewera, which is a settlement body, is also the operational side of this. And I think to get to where we are with how the settlement was set up, we have to sort of look at how the Te Urewera National Park as it was came about. And it's, you know, there are several volumes of Waitangi Tribunal reports that went into this. Tūhoe did not sign the treaty in 1840. There was little interaction with the Crown until the 1860s. And the kōrero should be Tūhoe's the tell, but I'll just give a brief kind of overview here. Some of the most productive land was seized in the 1860s as the war went through Bay of Plenty Way, where the Raupatu was taken off Tūhoe, never given back. In the late 19th century, there was an agreement signed with the Crown where Tūhoe remained self-governing. In 1896, Parliament passed an Urewera District Native Reserve Act. That was because after 20 years of negotiation, which enshrined Tūhoe lands around Te Urewera as this large reserve to be kept within Tūhoe, it allowed self-government. It was quite a unique thing, but as a Waitangi tribunal found, that Crown didn't uphold that obligation. Then over a few decades, much of this land has been lost through very dubious means. By 1921, 54% of this reserve is now in Crown hands. So it was a devastating purchasing campaign done on very questionable grounds. And then 1954, sort of unanimously, without any Tūhoe input, a national park was created, which just completely shut out Tūhoe of a lot of practices, a lot of its cultural work in Te Urewera. So that is the background to how that national park came to be, and it remained a thorn, a very sore point up until settlement in 2014.
And when you say Te Urewera is spoken for and governed by a board which has Tūhoe representatives as well as
Crown representatives, you know, we've had former diplomats, we've had former Prime Minister Jim Bolger as Crown appointees on this Te Urewera board. And it started 50-50, and in the settlement it's laid out that it will gradually shift to majority Tūhoe. And the operational aspect of this board is carried out by Te Urewera, who are responsible for putting into action protection of Te Urewera and things like that. So that's how this is structured here.
On DOC's website, it says the huts being removed are part of Te Urewera Board's efforts to better connect Tūhoe people to Te Urewera, a principal purpose of the Te Urewera Act. And it goes on to say that DOC supports Ngai Tūhoe in its vision for Te Urewera. What is that vision?
Yeah, and we heard Tamati Kruger, the chair of Te Urewera, come out and say this. He was on Checkpoint when this protest happened last month.
Well, first of all, I'd like to start with huts being the heart and soul of Te Urewera. That's rubbish, isn't it?
Why do you say that, Tamati?
Well, people are the heart and soul of Te Urewera. Te Urewera has its own heart and soul, not a hut or a shed or a toilet.
These huts, a lot of cases, are very old and run down, you know. They're not flash. I've been to a couple of them, and they're dingy, but they're shelters, you know.
I think to suggest that we continue to run Te Urewera with museum-type shelters and huts that becomes a memorial to what used to be in the 1950s and 60s is really not tenable. We should be all excited with what follows decommissioning, which is a brand new place, a cultural experience closer to Te Urewera with brand new facilities.
So Tūhoe is setting about reimagining the manuhiri experience for Te Urewera. The huts will have cultural elements. He said they'd be bespoke in terms of we haven't seen the actual plans yet, but they will be more than just, you know, a glorified shed with some bunks.
Remembering that the whole point, the whole moral objective of the legislation is the reconnection of Tūhoe with Te Urewera. We can't be bypassing Tūhoe people and then go and talk to trampers, hunters, and people who go boating and fishing.
It's how this has gone about, I think, that has caused a lot of the raru we're seeing.
Nevertheless, we have talked with some entities that have been very close and very contributive to Te Urewera for the last 40, 50 years. We have made it a mark to identify who our close friends are, who are the ones that share the Tūhoe vision for Te Urewera, and we have done all of that consultation with them. There are others that as individuals or smaller parties use Te Urewera. We haven't got around to them yet. But look, we've been doing this for a long, long time, and these people have not expressed an interest in talking with us.
But there is some friction within Te Uru Taumatua about its role, about whether it is usurping the role of hapu and things like that. There have been protests outside Te Uru Taumatua a few times in recent years, not just over the huts here, but this is the most recent flashpoint of that. There has also been one recently in terms of last year with the vaccination rollout. What role did Te Uru Taumatua have, and were they getting in the way of, say, other groups coming in? There was another one with some hapu wanted to apply for provincial growth funding for marae upgrades, but Te Uru Taumatua, they argued, got in the way. So there has been some protests and friction over this here and over the mandate for Tūhoe, and, you know, whether that layer is getting in the way of a hapu layer within Tūhoe. There is a lot to still work out. Settlement is not an end point, and it's a bruising process that takes time and stirs a lot of issues that have to be thrashed out. So I think we are seeing that manifest in this hut story. Right? It's been a flashpoint for something that's been simmering and something that is deeper. Tūhoe and Te Uru Taumatua have made no secret of the overarching plan to, you know, create something different with Te Urewera, something to have Tūhoe Tana stamped on it. And you can see the aspirations for the connection they want Tūhoe to have with Te Urewera, but also manuhiri to have with Te Urewera.
So the cultural experience would be that in the future that Tūhoe people will be hosting visitors, can host visitors who wish to contact and have friendship and relationship with Tūhoe people and get to know their daily life, where they go, what they do, what they eat, what they're observing, and how they commune with Te Urewera. And so that to me is more authentic.
You know, I have whānau who work for Te Uru Taumatua in different areas, and they're very positive about the direction they're going in and the long-term vision that Te Uru Taumatua has for Tūhoe and self-governance and self-determination. And then you have whānau who feel like they're not being heard, they're being left out. We've got different hapu who have kind of pulled away from Te Uru Taumatua. So I see it from both sides, people are very happy with the direction they're going in, but also people want more transparency and change and I think more of a voice in some of the processes and decisions that are being made.
You talk about the vision of Te Uru Taumata, and it does sound,
beautiful.
Yeah, tell me about that vision.
It's about that self-governance and self-determination, and I think recently I've seen the eco-villages have, I think their first lot of eco-villages in Taniatu are about to open, and I think for some whānau it's not seeing the results on the ground. Not the results on the ground, but not seeing the benefits of the treaty settlement straight away. It is an area where a lot of whānau struggle, and, there's inadequate housing and access issues and to services. So I think that's been one of the difficult things for some whānau, maybe not seeing the benefits straight away. But I guess that takes time as well.
You're the new generation of Tūhoe, so do you feel connected?
When you move away, you lose that connection. I'm lucky my parents are always back at Maraehui and, trying to stay involved in the politics at home, which is, they're not always pretty. But but if, these huts and creating new spaces is a way to draw more whānau home and to help my generation who have moved out of Te Urewera to, find that connection back to their whānau and to the taiao, I think that could be really beneficial.
That's it for today. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. The Detail is public interest journalism funded through NZ On Air and produced by Newsroom for RNZ. You can get us downloaded free to your mobile device every weekday from any podcast platform. Today's episode was engineered by William Saunders and produced by Bonnie Harrison and Sarah Robson. And thanks to John Boynton and Jamie Tahana. Ka kite.